Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Wellness Wednesday, Thriving with Autoimmunity. Today we have a special guest in store for you today, Dr. Noha Polack, who has been practicing pediatrics in New Jersey since 1996, most of those years at Progressive Pediatrics. She is passionate about advocating for healthy living in preteens and teens and helping them love their body, working on the mindset of them as well as their habits in a way of making a difference in the world. She is speaking to all parents and professionals who encounter this age group, as well as parents, to help them use the right language to communicate about health rather than weight. Welcome, Dr. Polack.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited to have you because this is such an important issue that I feel a lot of times we ignore, or we say the wrong thing or don't know what to say. So if you could just share with us a little bit about your background first and how you got into this work.
Yeah, so, I've been practicing pediatrics now going on 30 years, and that's a long time. And really, the conversation has shifted so much in medicine and also just in the community at large, where we were initially talking all the time about, okay, let's make sure we get everyone into this right BMI range because that's the only way to be healthy. So it was push, push, push to get someone into the right BMI range. And what happened was noted that, it's really hard to get everyone into the right BMI range, first of all, number one. Number two, the BMI is not the best way to measure someone's health, for sure. And thirdly, that even if you change someone's BMI, it doesn't stay like that, right? It moves up, it moves down, things just change. So I would say that the last 5 years, in my experience in medicine, things have begun to shift where the conversation needs to be a lot more about inclusion, acceptance, and health, looking at someone's entire health rather than just their body weight or BMI as a measure of health.
I completely agree. Having an autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, thyroid autoimmune, as well as hypothyroidism, if you're just looking at that one in particular disease that I have and not looking at everything else that's happening in my body, it could be detrimental to me as a whole, right? And not being able to function properly. So I really, truly believe what you're saying as far as shifting from just knowing what the BMI is the right one versus, how do you sustain a healthy, active lifestyle and work together holistically. If you could talk a little bit about recognizing the anti-fat bias in healthcare and the community at large, and the impact and your experience with that.
So the truth of the matter is I learned this the hard way. I used the wrong language, right? And then I had actually young patients correct me. So example, I was seeing a teenager, about 13, 14, young teenager. And I started during his physical exam to talk about his weight. He goes, "Hold on, doc, I didn't give you permission to do that." I was like, okay, fair enough, right? So conversation shifted. Another time when I, discussed the BMI in front of a young patient, an 8-year-old, and her mom, the outcome of that conversation was that she never wanted to come see me again. So changes happen, and all of us learn, right, from our own mistakes. So I had to recognize my own weight bias, to be honest with you. And once I kind of looked in the mirror in that way, I was able to see it a lot more clearly. So what gives a person, whether it's a physician, a teacher, a cousin, the right to say, you look like you gained a bunch of weight. What's going on with you, right? Which is something very common that we all hear. Or why are you not doing, this kind of lifestyle? Why are you not eating exactly like that? And judging people in that way without looking at their entire life. What else is happening in your life? So I would say that that's how I started the conversation, by learning myself what the wrong thing to say was, and then learning what the right thing to say became. And now I think the conversation, especially in my practice, has really shifted to where I ask, especially a preteen and a teen, how they feel about their body. Do they feel good when they're moving? Are you able to stay active the entire gym period? Or are you unhappy, out of breath? Do you feel good when you're playing a sport with your friends, etc.? As an entryway to a conversation that they may or may not be ready for, and to wait until they're ready to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. Not everyone's ready to have that conversation or any conversation on a topic in that moment, just because you're ready to have it with them, right? And learning the wrong way to know the right way, I think is so apparent in so many things in life, because we want to do the right thing, where it's always our intention, but we may stumble upon how to get there, right? And that's okay, because that's what we're learning and we're growing, and the essence of life is growth. And in order to have these conversations and really have an impact and an influence on the younger generation, being a mom myself, I had to learn ways to talk to my son about certain topics. Whereas I may talk to my friend very differently about it, and it's the languaging behind it. And, I love what you said about looking in the mirror and figuring out yourself first, because if you can't look yourself in the mirror, you can't really look anybody else in the eyes and help them. Because if you're not sure about who you are and what you stand for and how you can help yourself first, it's really difficult to have the right languaging and the right conversation about a topic that is so extremely sensitive in our society and with people and teens and preteens. I see it with my son and his friends all the time. And, I want to butt in sometimes, but at the same point, it's let them figure out their conversation as peers. And then let me talk to my son about how he can help be the influencer in a positive way with his languaging, and not me, the mom, coming in and saying, well, it should be this way, it's not that way, because then they're going to do that. Listen, kids are going to do things the opposite of what parents say. But when they're, working with you, Dr. Polack, it's very different, because you are their pediatrician, you are their doctor, you're a trusted source. And sometimes they may talk to you in confidence. I know their parents have to be in the room, but they may be more apt to open up or have that conversation later on and be open to it. Or, someone says something, maybe they'll take it a different way and not be offended, and be able to respond instead of react in that moment with that person or people.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the best thing that we can do as parents, teachers, and healthcare professionals is teach our kids how to advocate for themselves when they're feeling like they're being pushed into something they're not ready for. So sometimes I like to give the kids the language to use with people who are perhaps well-meaning, but saying the wrong things that make them hurt, that hurt their feelings. So I like to help them understand that, their body shape doesn't define them, and they have to understand that and kind of live it. Like, my body shape is just a shape. It's not who I am. It's not all of me, number one. Number two, that they do have the right to say to someone older than them, I'm not ready for this conversation. Today's not the right day. I appreciate your input, but maybe we can have this conversation differently. And to say to someone at school who's maybe pushing their buttons, you know what? I was active the entire 40 minutes in gym class today. Were you? Right?
Absolutely.
Right? You know what? I'm eating my salads 3 times a week. What about you? And so to help people understand that it isn't just their shape that defines how healthy they are, but it's actually the little tiny steps that they're taking every day that make them healthy.
Absolutely. And that is so important to understand, because everybody's a different shape and size, and that's who you are. That's your makeup. You can't change that. You were born that way, but you can change how you feel your body every day and your responses to people every day. Having that positive mindset and being really, when the trigger happens, you're more apt to, go into that, the questioning and the being responsive and like reactive instead of what you said. I love those responses. I mean, honestly, I work with my son all the time. Things happen. Kids are mean. They're
They
gonna
are.
it's gonna happen. Unfortunately, it's part of life. But when you help and show kids how to be their own advocate, and they're not, coming home crying, "Mommy, what do I do next?" Like they come home and say, "Mom, someone said this to me, and I told them that I was active all 40 minutes in gym class, and they had no response and they walked away." That's powerful, and it's also changing the stigma of the anti-fat bias by allowing people not to pick on them, not to gravitate towards them, and it happens with the shy kids, it happens with the smart kids, it happens with all different types of children. But having that response and being educated and trusting your doctor to be able to help you with that, and you just become a better person, a better, well-rounded person, and then you start to be the one that's advocating. So you start to be the influence, and you start to help change the anti-fat bias right there in the school with your peers.
And I know that many people in your audience are probably parents or grandparents, and how we talk about other people in front of our children is so important. If you see someone struggling to do anything and you make a comment about their size rather than their struggle, your kid takes on that message and they internalize it. So let's just be aware of our own thoughts, right? None of us are perfect, so we all still make mistakes, myself included. But just notice what thoughts are coming into your head when you see someone of a larger size, whether they're struggling with something or just not sitting in the way you expect them to sit on an airplane, etc. Right? Just pay attention to your thoughts and what you say in front of your children. And if you don't have anything to say, it's better to be quiet.
Bite your tongue. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's, because kids are a product of their environment. Well, anyone is, right? But we're talking about children here, and the parents are the direct influence. So, and I know, like, when I see someone that's overweight, in my mind is, what's their struggle? What are they going through? How can I help them without being, like, I don't want to offer them advice. No, they don't want that. How can I help them? If they can't bend over and pick something up, help pick that up for them and just smile and be kind. Because what's your feeling on that?
But ask permission before you help. Because honestly, I know a lot of people who are larger size, who are perfectly healthy and perfectly capable of bending over and getting all their own stuff. So don't make assumptions, ask permission, right? Right?
Always.
And if they're not interested, if they don't need your help, they're your equal. They're not someone in need of help. So I would say it like that. And again, none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, but let's just recognize it at least.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said about asking permission, because a lot of times, me included, I want to help. I want to help anybody and everybody, overweight, not overweight, elderly, younger. I just love helping people. That's in my DNA. But if you're not asking permission, it may come off as offensive. That they're not capable of that.
Exactly.
Who knows what's going on in their head in that moment, or how their day's going. By asking for permission, they can tell you yes or no, and then move on, right? And then you are completely equal in that moment. And there's no bias either way. It's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of times I think with the we have judgment in our head. Which may or may not exist, right? And so, judgment never exists, in my opinion, but some people believe that it's the truth when it's not. And so by asking that permission, we are allowing ourselves to help if they want and not if they don't. And then we're all equal. Yeah, absolutely. And if you could talk a little bit more about, advocating for positivity, judgment-free conversations about health, I think this is a good segue into that. And it's, a really important topic that my audience would really appreciate understanding.
Yeah, so I'm speaking to both adults as well as teens in this situation where I do want to advocate and enable everyone to speak if they feel like in a healthcare setting they're being signaled out in some way, right? So let's say you walk into an office of any sort, healthcare or otherwise, and all the chairs have handles for people who are, not your size. You don't fit in these chairs. That is a form of bias, right? They did not think about all body sizes when they bought their furniture, period. So it is okay for you to say, Doc, I would really appreciate it if your chairs were a little bit more inclusive of those of us in different sizes. It's okay to say that, because how else would people become aware, right,
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
their own biases? Number one. Number two, if you are in a situation where you are struggling with a health concern, and the answer always is lose weight, lose weight, lose weight, go ahead and ask in that situation, you know what, doc, do you think that people who are thinner than me also get this condition?
Mm,
And if the answer is yes, sometimes, then you can ask, well, then can you please treat me in that same way? It's not
mhm,
all about my weight. My knee pain can be many other things. My hip pain can be many other things. Can you treat me just like that? It will help all providers, I think, and teachers to say, oh, yeah, this is not only in people of larger size that have this particular struggle. Let me investigate better. Let me investigate further. So that's another way to kind of advocate for yourself, whether you're a teen or in your 90s. I feel like we all have to speak up for what's right. And again, providers are not immune to being, incorrect. So it is okay for you to bring things up and say, I would really wish it if you could help me understand how you treat people of different sizes with this particular medical condition.
That's so important. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of times we feel like the provider is the expert, right? You're going to them for their expertise. So why should I question them? When in reality, if you bring it to their awareness, it would be beneficial for everybody, right? For the provider, for you, for the other people that are coming in, the future patients. And being able to have that conversation openly with the proper languaging, so it's not accusatory, it's just an open awareness conversation. Dr. Polack, I loved your languaging and how you delivered that just now, because it's not offensive, right? It's just a conversation that you're inquiring about for the awareness. And quite frankly, especially about the chairs, the doctor honestly probably had nothing to do with ordering the chairs. And they probably have no idea that that's even an issue, because they're not in the waiting room. They're back in the room with you, right? So how would they know? and bringing that up and having an awareness and, other pains that are going on in your body, it absolutely could be related to different things, not just your weight. Right. And then to your point as well, other people that are not overweight or larger than you, then, there's different people that have the same thing. So why are we treating this as a weight issue? Why don't we treat it as what it is? And then back to your original point at the beginning, holistic health, and, being well-rounded and treating somebody well-roundedly, not just for one thing when they come in for something else that's totally not related, and having that awareness, it really will help the providers be better and help the patients be healthier long-term and have a better understanding of their health moving forward.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And share a little bit about helping teens love their body they're in and healthy physically and emotionally, and the parent, what is the parent's position in this?
Yeah, so it's been my, personal and professional experience that teens are acutely aware of their body shape, and often actually there's a lot of shame associated with it. So
Mm,
It is okay to ask permission to talk about it. It is okay to ask as a parent, how are you feeling today? Right?
Mhm.
You don't, teenagers change really fast, right? Their
Mhm.
mindset changes fast. How are you
Mhm.
feeling today? I'm feeling great today. I'm feeling down today, etc. And if they do say, I'm feeling down, or they seem upset, it's okay for you to ask, is there something that you can talk to me about, or would you rather go see your doctor about how you're feeling? And then when you go and see your doctor about how they're feeling about their body, if they usually, when we ask, how are you feeling about your body, are you happy with your body shape and size, or how you're moving, there's always tears. And so just let them be with their sadness. And then I would really love it if the parents would allow their child to speak up for themselves rather than kind of interfering or intervening. Just allow them to let their feelings out and then to move forward. I mean, I love to talk to teenagers about their body shape. That's my thing, that's my groove.
Mhm.
But not all doctors like it. And if your doctor doesn't like it or seems uncomfortable with it, that's okay. You know what? You can take your child to a doctor that's more comfortable with it so that your child is more comfortable. So the goal here is to make your child happy with their body and to be as healthy as they can possibly be, not to fit into this exact mold that they're seeing on Instagram of how everybody's supposed to look. So let's talk to our children honestly about their health, and if they feel healthy in their body size, well, then let's applaud them,
Mhm.
and let's test. If there's a test you're worried about, if you are really worried about their cholesterol, well, let's test it. Let's talk about what habits can decrease their cholesterol. If you're really worried about them being pre-diabetic, let's do that test and let's have that discussion. But if they don't have any of those risk factors or pre-diabetes or high cholesterol and they love their body, just help them move. That's your job.
Mhm.
Just help them move in a
Mhm.
comfortable, happy way, um, and help them to advocate for themselves and to look at Instagram as something that is not just Instagram, all social media, right? As something that is somebody's perfect today versus your everyday, right?
Mhm. So spot on. Yes, because I mean the teens are on preteens and teens are on social media. It's like I think it's glued to their hands. I don't think it ever goes away. It's just very different. The generation now is very different. And it has, social media has such a huge impact on their lives. But to your point, Dr. Polak, that that's their perfect day on Instagram, right? Or perfect life. It's not their everyday life. And I love when you see people that'll throw on something that's like, well, the behind the scenes. What actually happened before I posted this? It's like that's the reality and that's normal life. But I think so often that we portray ourselves and look at that as the self-image of who we want to be and what we want to look like. Just like back in the day when you looked at the magazines and the model magazines, they're all airbrushed and computerized. They don't look like that in real person. If you met them, they don't look like that. And they shrink them, and then it's not a healthy active lifestyle. It's in that moment for that post, for that shoot. But yeah, and just understand that, right? So when having the conversation, I love what you said too about how are you feeling today. And that's something I implemented a long time ago with my clients. And how are you feeling today? Because today could be very different than yesterday, and it could be very different than what's going to happen tomorrow. But how are you feeling today? Let's talk about that and what we can do to keep you feeling amazing, or if you're not, how can we help you in what's going on with you and your body? And a really good point as well when you mentioned, if a preteen or teen or a mother, if they feel like they love their body and they are overweight, that is incredible because they have the self-confidence of who they are in their bodies. But maybe there's other ways to, well, what are we doing to get moving every day? What are we consuming in terms of food every day? Not, oh, you're overweight, let's, get the weight down. No, they're happy and they like their body, which is incredible. So to keep just helping them. And again, I believe what you said too, is that languaging. and how you have the conversation is so important, because it could go one of two ways. It could be extremely helpful, or it can go completely the other way and they'll never talk to you again. And especially at the teen and preteen age, it's so important, if they are talking to you, let them talk, because you've been waiting for this moment, right? I know with my son and a bunch of his friends too, and girls and boys are very different in my experience so far, as far as what they say and how they say it. But when he talks, I don't say a word. I do not. I let him finish, and then I just continue on the conversation. And it's really amazing what you can have and enjoy with your kids when you listen, right? Just
Absolutely.
listen. It's such an important trait in life to be able to listen. And as a provider, having that as one of your, I call it, tools in your toolbox, oh my gosh, that's absolutely incredible, because a lot of providers don't, and they just go with, X, Y, this is what you have, X, Y, Z, okay, next, and that's not the holistic approach. So I appreciate what you're doing for our community and the greater community at large. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point? And also tell people how they can get in touch with you, my audience and your audience. How can they reach you if they have questions or want to know a little bit more about the topics we discussed today?
So I would love to speak to many more people on many more venues and stages about this particular topic. I feel like we need awareness. I feel like we all need to advocate for ourselves and our children, those of us of different body sizes, and the equality of different body sizes, that there is no exact ideal. So if you want someone who can speak to your audience, I'm that person. Reach me on LinkedIn. It's Noha Polack MD, just like it's spelled here. And it's easy to find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure we can put a link in the show notes, how to reach me. And I think that's probably the best way. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook with the same handles. And so I think my goal now is going to be to take very good care of my patients and just raise awareness about this topic and how we can advance how children advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. And it's such an important topic. And the more awareness we have, the more people that can hear what you're saying, the better we're going to be as humans on this planet. And I am so grateful for you and the time you took today. I will go ahead and drop the links underneath as well for Dr. Polack, so you can get in touch with her if you have any other questions or you want her for speaking engagements. And let's all continue having the awareness for the anti-fat bias and allowing our teens and preteens to be heard and listen, so we can help them be better people. Thank you, Dr. Polack.
This was a pleasure. Thanks.